All right, so we're going to now take a look at a large chunk of what we are going to be doing with our trig unit this year. When it comes to our right angle triangle, one of the big things that we want to be able to do is be able to determine the angle measure based on two sides. Right? Now, the angle measure based on two sides is going to depend on which sides we have, but we can most definitely use the sides and our ratios that we just found prior. So you'll notice here we have our ratios that we found in the previous video that are up just a little higher in your notes. These ratios can help us to find the measure of the angle. Okay, they can help us to find the measure of the angle. We're going to be taking a look at a button that you've probably never used before that is on your calculator, and that is what we might see as the tan button. And if you have a right angle, a scientific calculator, you will have a tan button on your calculator. If I look at my calculator here that Google has provided here, it's right here. There's a tan button. Okay, that is what we're going to be using to find the angle measure on this triangle based on the ratio that we had prior. So grab your calculator. We're going to be going through how do we find that, and we're going to use our tan button. Now, I know some of you are a little disappointed. You were hoping that tan button was actually going to be a nice sunshine or a nice light to give you a nice tan. Sorry, we don't provide that in class here. All right, what do we do first? The first thing we need to do is we need to label our triangle based on the angle that we have. So find angle A. We're going to start with angle A, and then we'll do angle C later. Okay, we're going to label it just like we did here. So angle A is right there. This is our opposite side. This is our hypotenuse down here. And this is our adjacent side. There you go. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to look at. The next thing, number 2, states that we need to determine the formula we're going to use for this angle. What we're actually trying to do is we want to figure out which ratio we're going to try to find, and it's going to be, which ratio we're going to use to try to find the angle. In this case, it's going to be tan. The reason it's going to be tan is because we know the adjacent and the opposite sides. So we know the adjacent and opposite sides. That means we're going to use tan, all based on the sides that we know. We're going to do tan theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. We're going to use this equation, this ratio that we have. Okay, so this is what we're going to use. Again, for this part right here, we're just going to use tan. As we move a little bit farther along, we're going to use other ones as well, and I'll teach those to you in just a little bit. So what we need to do in this case here is we're going to insert the values that we have into our equation. Okay, so we're going to insert the values that we have into our equation. I'm going to use a different color for this as well. Let me use just down there. So I'm going to keep everything that we have so far so good. You'll notice here we have this theta value in here. The theta represents our missing side. That's right here. Okay, that's A. We don't know what A is. It's a missing side. So we're not going to put anything in there right now. We're going to leave it as theta. Tan of theta is going to equal the opposite, which is 7 over 11. Now, if you look at this here, you're going to notice that this is that same ratio that we found up here for A. Okay, it's that exact same thing. That's our tan ratio. Okay, now what we want to do is we are going to now solve for what is our missing angle. What is theta right here? What's that missing angle? And to do that, we have to get it by itself. Now, if we remember our algebra that we've gone through in the past, to get it by itself, we need to get rid of everything around it. And so we're going to get rid of the tan by doing something called inverse tan. Okay, we're going to do inverse tan, which means that we need to get rid of this piece right here from both sides. Or we're going to do it to both sides. So what it's going to look like is we're going to, if we do inverse tan, it removes it on this side here. And the theta is all by itself. But now we're going to have tan negative 1 of 7 over 11. So we're going to do the inverse tan of our ratio. We do the inverse tan of our ratio. All right, so this part here is mostly just for show. It will end up being what we end up doing, but now we can solve for what is our what is theta. Tan is a function done on your calculator. That's all it is. It's a function done on your calculator which recognizes how you've put in your ratio. Okay, so it recognizes the ratio and it converts that ratio into an angle measure. Okay, it converts it into an angle measure. So how do we do that? Well, theta in here, theta is going to equal, let's take a look at a calculator. Now I'm going to use a Google calculator. You can use a different one as well. Okay, on your calculators, you're going to have an inverse button. Mine is up here on this side. Yours might be a shift, which could be up, it's usually up on the top left of your calculator. We're going to do this in class as well when you're in class and we're talking about this. So we're definitely going to talk about it in class, but we hit the inverse, and then mine shows up here as tan -1. So we're going to hit our tan button, tan -1. Now here it says arctan. Don't worry too much about that, but that is one of the ways of doing it. Now I do arctan of 7/11. Now I have it in brackets. Okay, and I'll show you a different way of doing it as well. Probably in class we'll talk about a different way of doing it with a calculator. On Google, it's a little bit harder to do it the way we usually do in a calculator, so we'll go through it there. But when I hit enter, I get this angle right here. Okay. And that seems to be a little bit wrong. All right, so the inverse, that should be, let's see if we can do it differently here. 7 divided by 11, this is the way I would normally get you do in calculators. And we hit equal, we get our angle. Inverse tan of the answer is that. Okay, wow, did it wrong again. Now, some of you might be doing this as well and be getting the same answer, but you might be getting different answers. I got that answer because I am in the wrong I'm in the wrong unit for the calculator. Now, calculators have 3 different units. This one has 2, has radians and degrees. We want to be in degrees. So now when I do it here, inverse tan, I'm going to do 7 divided by 11, close brackets. I'm going to actually get 32.47 or 32 degrees. That is the correct answer. It's got to be in degrees. We'll talk about your calculators in class as well, and we'll go over that. But make sure your calculator is in degrees. So that means that this is 32.47 degrees, which we're often going to just round to a single place, not even a decimal place, we're going to round to a single unit or the ones. So this would be just 32 degrees. Now we always put the little degree sign in there. That's our unit in this case here. So we have to represent it with a unit. That's the measurement. That is this measurement right here. Now we could do the exact same thing and find angle C. Angle C, we're given this ratio. Okay, I'm going to use this ratio. I'm not even going to label it. I already have it up here. I'm going to use that ratio to find angle C. This is angle A. I'm going to find angle C, and I'm going to do that using, let's do this pink here. For angle C, I'm going to plug it in a little bit differently here. I'm just going to do theta. Angle theta is equal to tan -1 of 11/7. Next, I get rid of the extra there. All right, so when we do this, again, we're going to use our calculators to do this. Theta is going to be, we plug it in. Okay, so inverse tan of 11/7 is 57.52, or just 58 degrees. We'll actually round it to 58 degrees. And you'll notice that if we take 58 and we add 32, it gives us 90. 58 plus 32 is 90. So that's another way of solving it. Because we found this one already, we could do 90 minus 32, and that would give us 58. Or we can use our ratio that we found earlier to solve for that as well.